let this thing kind of take its course before we really start.
Nobody really has.
I'd like to call the meeting of the Ramsey County Commission to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank everybody in attendance today for being here. It's good to be back up in our normal confines of the commission room and seeing the sunshine this morning. First item on the agenda, approval of the minutes.
Second.
We have a second, motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Both sets.
Both sets, special meeting from last Thursday and then the last meeting in March. So, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Bills. Any questions on the bills or anything that stands out?
There's a couple on the highway list that we'll have motions for later.
Okay.
I'll move to approve payment bill.
We have a motion and a second to approve paying the bills. Roll call, please.
Wakefield,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Lightcon,
Aye.
Brett.
Aye. Motion carries. Financial report. Everybody got a financial report in their packet. Anybody have any questions, concerns, comments, Candy?
No, we're good.
Looks very good.
Make a motion to approve financial report. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the financial as submitted. Any further discussion? If not, roll call please.
Holt,
Aye.
Wakefield,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Lightcon,
Aye.
Brett.
Aye. Motion carries. Treasurer's checks.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the treasurer's checks as submitted. Roll call please.
Lightcon,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Wakefield,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Brett.
Aye. Agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda for today?
Make a motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as listed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Otis, are you taking Sarah's spot today or? Oh, there she is. Wonderful.
I think she was right.
I'll go first and then I'll let Bill do his thing.
Thank you, Sarah.
So we were able to get a new administrative assistant. Yay. So she's going to be starting on Wednesday. Her name is Trisha Byrd. So we are excited to have her. She came highly recommended and so we'll start with that on Wednesday. We've just been busy in our office. Bill was able to successfully get all his pesticide training done. I'm sure you're glad to be done with that. But I think that went well. And we're working on a lot of 4-H summer mini camps. We've got about 10 offerings, so we've been busy with that. We did receive a grant from our 4-H state 4-H association, and we're going to be offering a career exploration day for our older 4-Hers. So we're going to partner with LRSD and offer kind of a day camp for them to learn about just a variety of careers available to them. So we're just trying to get our older 4-Hers motivated and kind of doing more leadership type activities. Our communication arts and clothing reviews set for early May, so we're gearing up for that. And so just a lot of 4-H happenings going on. And otherwise, I have Bill here. He's got something that he'd like to say.
Yeah. First off, farming this spring is gonna be a little rough unless we get some water. We need to figure out how to get that wall to move from the southeast US to up this way some. I mean, we don't need a lot of water, but some water would be very helpful. You go through the countryside, and there's actually some pockets that's got water down maybe inch or so some of those areas we're still okay proceeding, but we're gonna need some moisture before we get very far down the road pretty badly. Lastly, comes the hardest part. I'm here to inform the commission that as of July 15th, I'm gonna retire. You might say, why so early? And I've talked to our leaders, and by doing the process early, might get us a step ahead of getting somebody back in here sooner. If I would wait until 1st of June and do something like this, it could probably be January, February before somebody would be in. So hopefully by announcing early and letting the commission, you'll be getting a formal letter here at your next first meeting in May, 8th of May. Officially do that, but it's my intent is July 15th. Am I gonna miss it? Oh yeah. But as I wrote in my letter, the kids always said I have an easy job, and I said, if you go where I go and you do what I do, you'd say, wow, and you'll read that one day. And I said, now it is time to go and not do the whatever else goes with it. So I have appreciated very much the community support, especially the commission support for our office has been phenomenal. There's a lot of counties in the state that don't treat their extension offices quite so well, particularly with funding and that kind of stuff. So I very much commend you all for that and for hiring me way back in, I don't know what it was, 2003 or what, I don't know what it was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, I think so. We're talking about that this morning, Debbie and I don't know if it was 3 or 4, but I think it was 3. So, met a lot of really good people. One of the best communities around. Of course, I gotta say that, but it is. So.
You did a very good job, Bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to leave.
Yes, I'm
I'll
sure
shed
will.
some tears.
You'll be missed too.
Yeah.
Got a lot of roots in the community.
We're not going far. We're gonna spend a lot of time at the lake and do that kind of stuff, and of course, the grandkids are in every job last thing. And in the springtime, February, we're gonna probably head to Florida, so Mama can watch Twins baseball. She's a Twins fanatic, and if she can watch preseason and be warm, she'll be happy.
Did you watch yesterday?
Debbie, when doesn't she? If she's not home, she takes it. Yeah, so anyway, I do thank you. The community and everybody is great. And like I said, I'll give you my formal handwritten piece at the first meeting in May. Okay?
Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah, also.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up, Ramsey County Water Board, I asked Brian to come in, Brian Volk, the chairman of the Water Board, come in and give us an update on some of their projects that they have going on around the county concerning water. So Brian, take it away.
Well, for being as dry as it is, it's actually been very busy last week and a half dealing with projects as they're starting up already. First, the Edmore Cooley project that we've been working on for the last couple of years, that's slowly coming together. I just talked to the engineer here last week and he said everything is done, the ballots are being put together. We're expecting them to go out within the next month or so. Then we'll have a couple big informational meetings, one for Cavalier County, one for Ramsey County. Everybody will have the ballots on that time so that they can vote whenever they're ready for. There's 2,700 ballots were put together for this. So there's that many parcels and landowners involved in this. That's why it's taken the last year and a half, is just getting all the parcels identified and getting to this point. So we hope, we haven't heard of any real opposition to the project yet. That'll come obviously as soon as the ballots go out, we assume. Just drove through that country and kind of a tour of it to get more familiar with it over the weekend. Now, if you want to see problems out in the countryside and water, this is a great time to do it. There's a lot of culverts that are in disrepair after they're out of the water now. You can see how bad the cattails are. They had more specifically, I drove along on Highway 4. There's no water in the channel. if you go up towards Edmore, the culverts are half underwater. So just without digging into it any deeper, I'd say there's a big problem up in that area. It's what these landowners are complaining about that brought them to us in the first place. Next one is we worked over on the eastern side of the county here a little bit. We brokered a deal between some landowners over a long-standing issue. The water board isn't specifically involved in the project, but we facilitated the conversation, got it going. I think it went well. Anytime you can get 8 guys in the same office and they're not complaining about the situation and willing to work together on it, I thought was a pretty big deal for over what we've dealt with in the past. Got a Grand Harbor project, if any of you can remember hearing about that in the past. It was an assessment area. Guys asked to put it together themselves. It's been working well. They're finally out of the water over there and able to get it going again. What we've discovered is when the water was high, they had removed about 1/3 of the acres from the assessment. And now as it's working again and the money's coming up, we've got to figure out how to get the other 1/3 of the acres identified again back into the paying the assessment. And then finally, our Clara Watershed project that was a snag and clear project. That one's been starting. It's caused a few eyebrows to come up. As we started, originally intended that they're definitely starting from the bottom, but the frost was a bigger issue than they thought. They're making a pretty big mess with the spoil piles. The contractor was working with the wildlife, and they thought with changing political spectrum right now that while the wildlife was willing to work with them, they went a little farther north up into the Hope Bartlett areas and worked through a wildlife area with Brian Voss of the wildlife. And that one caused a little bit of controversy from the locals as they weren't expecting to see the contractor working there with the southern part of the ditch not being done. After kind of a lack of communication was the biggest problem. As I talked with everybody understood what was going on. Got the feelings tempered down a little bit. The local landowners in the area played a big part in dealing with everybody that was surprised and thought were raising a little bit of concern. So I thought that was great that the local guys that were for it stepped up instead of having to stand here as a water board trying to explain the project. Right now, they did go down. They started at the bottom of the channel by Stump Lake. They're just about up to Highway 2 right now. I received a permit from the highway, so they're hoping to be there either this afternoon or tomorrow already, that they'll be working up by Highway 2, and I would expect at that time there'll probably be a few more comments and inquiries coming in as people see the visible part of the project. Highway seems to be on board with, it's a great deal to get any water that's along the highway out of there, so they were very willing to work with us, which was a change from what we usually deal with. So that project seems to be going well. We do expect a few more snags just from people that weren't aware of it as they bring in questions as they see the hose working. But so far it's going well and has been lowering some of the watershed already. So hopefully that continues forward. And the last thing is we do have an applicant finally for our office staff. I feel she is qualified, so we'll be talking to her a little more. Hopefully we have somebody to fill our desk, so it's a little bit easier to handle the day-to-day operations and dealing with different departments. So that's all I have. Whatever questions you have, I can answer now.
Brian, how long is that snagging and clearing project expected to last?
A lot of it depends on the ground conditions. We're expecting to get through in a couple months the main part of it, but then what we're expecting to see is as the water levels lower, we can go a little further into some of these cattail sloughs and re-lower them a little bit more. If conditions stay like this, I would say the majority of it will be done by midsummer. Then we'll go back and touch up a few pieces. It'll last a little bit longer. Some of the wildlife areas we're going to go through, we're not able to skirt around the easement areas. So we'll have to close those up again in 3 years. That's kind of the way wildlife works. It'll allow you to kind of an emergency use of the channel, lower the water, and then you have to fill it back in. That doesn't mean that the water stops flowing at that point. You will obviously have these cattails down and you have a defined channel again to work with. So it won't be the end of the project, but it'll be, well, it's just, we're gonna take 3 years before we get to the point that we have to finish that. So talked to the contractor yesterday, he said, money wise, we'll have, the digging is probably going a little better than he was expecting, so he expects to have money left to do the close up and final touch ups of the project with no issues.
Yeah, and we'll continue on that timeline or that schedule of starting at the bottom.
Yep, that's
Working our way up.
that's been suggested to the contractor a few times after the surprise that he was up north. Everybody's very watchful as to what's happening on the upstream of them right now. So it was surprising, but everybody understands why they were there once they hear what's going on after the rumors stop and they actually get information. So
I think that's vitally important that since that the message that was conveyed at the public meetings, that how the project was gonna go from bottom to top, and that we continue on that road.
yep, and what I did is instead of the contractor calling me directly for everything, I said, we've got these township officials. Todd Aronson in that area is a big asset. Deal directly with them first before, so the information gets out where it needs to be sooner rather than everybody having to call me and try to spread it around. You talk to them first and then it gets up to me. That works a lot better, I feel.
Anybody have anything else for Brian? Always here.
Mr. Chairman, Brian, maybe you could talk about the culvert approaches on Ramsey 4. I think I'm up to speed, but.
I guess where we left that last year when we were talking about it is now it's on. We did have a stream crossing done on that. And after that, it's kind of up to the commissioners and the road division to decide what to do with the culvert issue that's there. I know right now I can say that the additional culverts that are put in are blocked.
They're blocked.
Yep, the dirt fell in around them, so there is no additional flow going through them right now.
So those are the ones that were done, kind of on their own kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
So did the stream crossing survey show that they needed the additional culverts, or? I haven't seen it. You haven't seen it yet, okay. I'm just kind of curious.
I'm not sure that we've got the official one back. At one of their meetings with the engineer came in, I believe they were saying it showed that those culverts are probably necessary or required to meet the stream crossing. But they were, with as flat as the ground was, they decided they needed to do some extra studying to see how many acres need to come into that area to study it. So I would say just by what we've learned in the past is that with them considering the excess rain we've had over the last 20 years, the culverts will probably be necessary to meet a stream crossing. And then you've got the issue as some of the culverts that are there are in tough shape. Are you going to try to work with what's there or take out the 3 culverts that are in some of those approaches and go ahead with one better culvert, or
All 3 culverts are plugged in up there?
the additional culverts are plugged. They were kind of pushed into the side of the bank, outside of the main channel to make room for them. And I think it was a pretty big mess when they were working on it, but they didn't get cleaned around them, so the dirt fell off the side and mostly blocked the additional culverts. So.
Yeah, because the new ones were put in on the, not on the highway side, they were put on the
East
field,
side,
field side, pushed into the bank. It was really wet conditions, so I imagine it's left or whatever.
Brian, you think we should clean them out?
Until you make a complete decision as to what you're going to do there, I guess I would probably leave them as they are. Until you decide, if you're going to work with what's there or fix, everything all at one shot.
Yeah, let's get the stream.
We don't have the official stream crossing back that you have anything to hang your hat on, so.
Yeah, once we get it back.
We haven't relied on it at that.
Yeah, the engineer came in and told us what they found so far, but they don't wanna put it down on paper with their signature yet until they do further studying of it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brian this morning? Thank you, Brian, for coming in this morning. Appreciate it. Let's see, Roger.
Yeah, a couple months ago, Candy asked me about putting a key fob system in the south end of Memorial Building Armory. The keys that are there, the locks that are there, they've been the same keys since I started. So God knows how many keys are out there. Now, we've never had an issue with people coming in that aren't supposed to be that we know of, but still, I know for like wedding dances and that, I think it'd be better to just be able to say, okay, here's your fob, and you know, they return that and they can't go out and copy the key somewhere else. So we got an estimate together, 4166, and I don't think it'd be a bad idea at all. Actually, I think it'd be a fairly good idea to do that.
And this 4166 just for the one entrance there?
No, it'd be the armory also.
Okay.
The south door and
Yes.
the west.
South door and west door.
Oh, so it's the west door too, okay, good. This is just the mounting stuff, it's not changing doors out or anything like that?
No,
It's
doors
just-
are all new.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Relatively new.
Okay, so it's just mounting hardware and,
Yeah, just getting the key fob system, the magnet and all that good stuff.
I guess I'm of the opinion, yeah, I agree, I think it makes sense. When you got weddings and you got renting the facility and all that, that way if the key doesn't find its way back to us, we can shut it off. It's a lot easier to know where the heck
And
the key
that,
goes.
you know, if that happens and they say, well, we lost our fob, they can shut that fob
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I'll make a motion that we go ahead and get those done.
Second.
And moved and seconded that we go ahead with, Lakeside Lock and Key, isn't it? 4166 is the total on that. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Roger. And Roger and I have been discussing the generator for the building and how we want to proceed with that. If we want to just get a quote from a generator company, or do we want to go through like a construction engineer type of professional to properly put together some bid specs?
You know, we already have a quote from Butler to put it in, but in order to put this out on bids, you know, we need a engineer or somebody like that architect to put together a formal, everything that needs to be done. I'm no engineer or architect, and yes, we have the stuff that Butler wrote down, but you know, you can't just take that and use that for your advertisement. They might not like that. So, like I said, if we decide to proceed with this, we'll have to get an engineer or somebody involved to, like I said, look this over, like we did with Mark Mechanical, air conditioning and all that, whoever we get. It's just something that we would have to do.
Johnson Controls, is that any idea?
They don't put in things like
No,
this.
I mean, do you have any idea on engineers?
Oh, I guess, in the past, I know Elizabeth, there was some website or something that you kind of advertise the amount of money and what you want to do, and it seems like engineers kind of contact you. That was my understanding of it.
I'll be hungry, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should run it by Johnson's, and see what who they would suggest to use, or how to go about it. Or, you know, another idea. What do you got?
Well, I think it's reasonable that we should go through, figure out somebody to work with, Simply because, you know, we've got it sized to whatever it used to, you know, but do we need more? Do we need, you know, larger generator, things like that?
Well,
Plus,
we were saying, and then actually this one, you know, that we got the estimate on last fall, the 219, that would be a big enough generator to cover the whole building. And if we get a new generator, I think we ought to get one to cover the whole building.
yeah, and I agree. Because we only have the capability to do what, certain floors right now?
Yeah, it's, you know,
Certain
and
areas.
that generator was designed for, you know, the basement at that time, and that was all it was designed for. And yes, it can run, it's running, part of second floor public health for their freezers and whatnot for vaccines, and it goes up to third floor runs the mainframe computer. So,
But I would assume that if we decide to make the change to go to the capability of running the whole building, then we'll have additional wiring costs, things like that, to tie everything together.
well, that should all
Yeah.
be, should have all been included in,
Yeah, should be in the
yes, but that should have been included in this original estimate.
Okay.
So they would have known, you know, you'd have to. And they were downstairs looking and deciding what they needed to do, and so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to work with somebody that, you know, we have a relationship with, and maybe they could give us some ideas on where we should go, and just kind of feel
Watch
it
out
out.
for our best interest.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the century code says that you have to get an engineer once you meet a certain dollar amount.
Right.
We're over that dollar.
Oh, yeah, I know that, that's what I was saying too, we got to go with it.
Yeah, it's just a matter of figuring out how we solicit finding the engineer work that, you know, we would like to work with.
So we'll keep that on the agenda for, next meeting and get some way to formally put that proposal together for an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one thing to keep in mind, if we do go ahead with this, we'll have to get a different, building for our four-wheeler and that, a little bit bigger than the existing one we have for the lawnmower, because, with the bigger generator will take up a little more space. It'll fit in the existing building, but I also keep the four-wheeler and snow blower in there, and there won't be room for that stuff anymore. So just to know it'll be a little more cost just to get a different building, a little bit bigger building.
We're gonna be building the garage too, is what you're telling us.
I wouldn't necessarily say garage, but all depends what you
Well,
call it garage.
Yeah.
County man cave.
Yeah, it could be the man cave, there you go.
Anything else, Roger?
Nope.
Any other questions from the commission? Thank you, Roger, for coming in.
Thanks.
We close enough to 8:30 to get into that portfolio discussion on the Bremer Bank?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion on, proposal from Bremer Bank, we'll let Blaine or.
Yes, it's his portfolio, let him take the lead if you want.
Yes, we met with the Bremer Bank on the money that we have with them, switch over or propose to switch to the Bremer Wealth. And what they're looking at is our money's in CDs and we're making like 0.25%. And they were proposing to try to move to the Bremer Wealth so we could try to make 1% to 1.25%, but it would be with the fees. And that's where we, Lucas and I and Lisa, we sat down and we want your guys' advice along with.
Right. I mean, the main issue to describe exactly what they're talking about doing is instead of having it in CDs, which pay you nothing, although the money is available, you know, whatever you need it, the only potential risk would be that you leave some money on the table on a CD if you bust it early. This would be directly exposing the county's money to market forces. So if you needed the money in a pinch, if for whatever reason bond prices tanked, that would reflect, it would be reflected in what you were able to draw.
There's some
But
risk.
the benefit of it is you can get much higher, relatively speaking, although there is no high fixed income returns in this market, but much higher returns on your money. And the way that they do that is with a simple rolling municipal bond fund. So, you've got bonds of all different maturities, and as the money matures, they put it on the back end of the ladder, and it just goes and goes. Based on our lack of need, at least with at Lisa has described it, it's not likely in my mind that this would cause problems for us, right? Because you never lose money on bonds if you let them mature. So the only way you could ever lose money is if you had to break open the whole thing and liquidate all the bonds, because then you've got market forces. Otherwise, when they mature, you get the amount of money that you put into them. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's worth pursuing. The question that I had was, because Bremer Bank is charging us a fee, which could become quite large over time in terms of total dollars, even though the county will be making more money also, does that mean that we sort of trip the wire and need to take bids?
So based on my research, you would have to bid it out.
And that's kind of what my expectation was. But so that we wanted to bring it to you guys because Bremer came to us and pitched us on it, to see, one, if the commission feels that it's an appropriate step to take, and two, if that is an appropriate step to take, can we take steps to bid that out and see who will give us the best fee rate?
So this is a rolling municipal bond structure.
Mhm.
Life of the fund, obviously, hypothetically, it's in perpetuity.
Mhm.
But on a yearly basis, on our average, what do we have usually, around $7 million, $5 million, something sitting at Bremer?
5 million.
So on our $5 million yearly, what's our difference in income off of that extra 1% then, right? It would be my math is 70,000.
Well, if it's 5 million, then it's 50,000.
50,000, I'm sorry, I'm thinking 7 million in my head. Okay, so we have the ability, so that's basically the life, over the life of the term, that could be, decent money, obviously.
Right, yeah.
That's how we were looking at it, but we wanted to know, since there was that charge, our big concern was debating it out.
Right, and then on top of that, it'd be worthwhile if the county chooses to pursue this to negotiate, because having been a former financial advisor, I can promise you that their fees are flexible. And, they won't tell you that in the meeting, but.
Oh, but they want your business.
Right, because it's essentially, once they set up the portfolio, it's free money for them over time, and so even though they take, what was their charge on that? I don't have it sitting in front of me. 0.23. Okay, so even though they're taking a little less than 0.25%, you're still looking at making a return, a much better return than you are in CDs or having it sit in a cash account. So.
He was 0.25%.
So how do they stack the muni bonds then, so that you have the ability to pull? Is it maturity over a certain amount of time frame, or?
Yeah, so normally you would have municipal bonds coming due every quarter. And so if we let wealth management know we're gonna need some of that money a quarter beforehand, if you only need the amount that's coming off that quarter, then that's easy. They just hand it to you basically, right? Because it'll all come free. If you need more than that, then you're giving them time to sell out the bonds. If you don't need it, they'll take that money and put it.
And they'll just roll it back. So they basically stack it, so we still have flexibility on this, on the plug, and then we also have the ability to make a little income off of the fact we're sitting on money there.
If you don't
That's
spend
okay.
it,
But
out
how
of
we
the account.
move the rest of the money to to Bremer. I mean, if they're gonna give us this deal,
Yeah, well,
Well,
if
it's not,
it's,
it's not really a deal.
or
It's-
not,
it's-
let me pay for
you're-
it, but,
you're paying for it.
we're giving them a deal.
we don't go under 9-10 million up until December, so, I mean, the rest of the money's probably gonna go that way too.
Well, yeah, especially if we do
haven't
especially if we do a bid process, I mean,
Yeah,
and
and I
allow
think,
everybody the opportunity to.
but I think you do, you bid it out, because you're talking about doing nothing, there's no difference in taxes, there's no difference in anything, and you're still talking about increasing the county's revenues by $100,000 a year or more.
Yeah, that's fairly substantial. That's a full-time employee and better.
So I think it's reasonable. I think all of us thought it was reasonable, but it's good to know from the state's attorney that we do need to bid it. And I think that that's a worthwhile thing to pursue, so.
I think it's all right.
And I did check with the state examiners, so I've got an answer to them. And they said, go ahead, there's quite a few counties and cities involved in this
What
already.
are doing it?
Uh-huh.
That was gonna be my next question, is where would be the first?
No.
Not the test case.
And it's not like you can't go back.
Right.
You're not locked into it.
Okay.
You
So if
don't
it's
have to
something,
worry about pleasant assets, everything is covered. They said, Bremer gets the bid, or that we could take our CDs out that I have already. And they wouldn't charge me.
There's no penalty.
Yeah, penalty.
That's staying with them, not saying that it gets bid out and then.
Exactly.
But just to be clear, the main difference with this is you're exposing the county's money to market forces, right? So if you have a major correction, that will reflect in what the instant value of our portfolio is. Obviously with bonds, once they come due, you'll get everything that they're worth, right? Whatever the face value of the bond is. Face value is $1,000. When it matures, you get $1,000 back. But if we needed all of the money for something, which I don't think we ever would, or a substantial portion of it, and it happened to be during a time of a correction, you could potentially see a loss of 10%. I mean, that's not likely, but it's a reality. So it's just something that we all need to consider. The only time that would happen is if you needed all the money and you needed it now. The opposite can also happen, by the way, right? So you could, right, so if your bonds could accrue value and be worth 10% more than their face value when you sold them, if you had to sell them. So just saying, it's.
yeah, there's risk involved. But municipal bonds are both the safest.
Oh, the odds
It comes
of
down
default
to-
are,
Are basically nil. I mean, there is the slight possibility, but, and even the bond market doesn't swing either
it's
low
not,
too often. It's
right,
usually fairly consistent.
right. This isn't suggesting that the county owned Tesla stock or something.
No. Let's go buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, right.
You go into the bid procedure and open it up and find out what you can get.
Okay.
That's gonna cost nothing.
No.
Well, yeah, we don't have to go along with it either. We can go through the bids and see if we're comfortable with it and then go from there.
You know, hungry they are.
Well, in that case,
Then we may not have anybody else wanting to do it.
But you still have to.
Right, exactly, I'm just.
but I'll make that in the form of a motion. I move that we bid out to see if anyone else wants to give us a bid on managing the county's wealth, in order to try to get us a better return on our money.
I will say.
Do we have
I
one?
have to
I got one, go ahead.
3 of my main banks that I deal with right now, is that gonna be sufficient?
Yeah, I think three is, yeah, that should be fine.
So we have a motion and a second to go ahead with the bid process for the money market proposal from Bremer. The Commissioners Wakefield and Volk brought to us. Ed, you had a question?
Yeah, Candy, you see any downside in this, or what do you think?
They've kind of kept me in the loop of,
The state auditors think it's all right?
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually the first people that we
Good.
checked with before we,
Even that one.
yeah.
You're gonna open it up to the whole community?
I'd open it up to the 3 main banks that we deal with right now. Unless you want me to go further than that.
You should open it up to everybody.
Okay.
I think it's
We can do that.
reasonable to allow, at least all our local banks to have a shot at it. It's no different than when we go try to solicit a loan for something. We always ask all the local banks, so I think it's reasonable.
And I'll check with the other counties to see if they have like a bid proposal type thing to present to them.
Get the right wording in there so we get what we're looking for.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion in front of us? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Kevin,
I've got quite a bit to go over, I don't mind waiting if you want. Work with some of the people that are here.
you go under the, move the unfinished business of the burn ban proclamation discussion up.
Sounds good.
All right. Somebody wanna have a discussion? Chris, you wanna mention a few things? Chris and I have been in communication quite a bit over this and, think that it should continue on.
Yeah, with the burn ban in place, one of the biggest things, comes to cost share. If we do ever need to reach out for any assistance, even anything, with the burn ban on, our cost share is 75-25. Without it, it's 50-50 after the fact. Other than that, if it is off, it is 100%. So we would face 100% if needed. Other than that, seems like daily we're having phone calls, at least for city fire, rural fire, going out, putting out fires, also rekindling of fires, or even this morning having a really odd call. But the entire state's for the most part, is in a high risk category. I'm just checking that now. It is still very high around the area. Sometimes they take our county and they put it to a little bit lesser, but we all know that the ground is dry. We know it's super duper dry. I can have some of the fire chiefs or fire departments even attest to that. It's gonna take one spark and we're gonna have a mess on our hands. So I'd like to just keep that ban in place.
We have several fire, department representatives in the audience. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Any, horror stories from the past week? I think you've all had.
I don't have any horror stories, but we haven't actually had a call at all. What I'm worried about is we have a burn ban in place, and when the farmers get going in the fields, they're gonna be working around a cattail slough in their field, and they're gonna burn it. Burn ban or place or not, they'll drop the match and drive away. I don't have the time or the resources to go out if every one of those fires get called in to respond to them, because we have to respond to them. And we're gonna have to work on them, whether they're a controlled burn or not. The fire's called, we need to respond. And once the farmers get moving in the field, they have 27 years of cleanup work to do. And they're gonna do it, I'm afraid. And I think it's okay as long as it's under control and they're taking the responsibility of the fire. But to say that yes, it's dry in the Cheyenne River Valley, absolutely. I mean, should not be burning in the Cheyenne River Valley or someplace that has no control. But these farmers are in a square section with a road around the whole field. You know, that's a completely controlled burn. I don't feel comfortable with that, with the complete burn ban. I think we should get to either the district or have some different zones in the county where it's allowed or not allowed, but just stopping it completely isn't going to stop the problem of fires. We had a ditch fire the other day that I just went out with our own piece of farm equipment and put out burn bans in place. Nobody stopped that guy from lighting that ditch on fire.
But he could have been charged with.
Well, I called law enforcement and
Yeah.
they just kind of laughed at me and said, what do you think we should do about it?
Well, if they're picking and choosing the laws that they choose to enforce, to me, they're not doing their.
Right, and I talked to sheriff and he kind of just said, what do you want me to do? And I don't know what to do. I mean, what is he gonna come, I mean, he can't come out and look for a match, but I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, but I know, I hate to see all these guys punished that are doing it properly. And me being a farmer side of that too, there's a lot of cleanup to work to do, and then the fire department side is we can't respond to every one of them fires.
What's Nelson County? They've got some type of,
They got a bird restriction, so basically it follows, if we've all seen the North Dakota response map with all the different categories. So they got it's a restriction in place. When it gets to very high, extremely high or red flag days, you cannot burn. Now, when it falls down below that category, you can go out and burn. And it's very easy to follow that map, and we educate as many people as we can on that. So, a couple days ago when it was windy, it was a red flag day, absolutely no burning, and you can get fined. But when it backs down, if you get a quarter inch of rain, 10, 20 hundredths, and the map falls back, you can go out and do your burning. So it basically follows the weather, and it's just kind of a variable day-by-day situation. You don't know if you can burn it tomorrow or not. So that's how they're doing it right now.
yesterday I went to Dakota there about 5 o'clock and I seen like 3 fires on the way down there and they were all in Nelson County. And I picked up the paper, I'm a reader, and I seen, just what you explained.
Yeah, and
it seemed to make sense to me. I said, well, in the middle of a cold land, black, I don't know how you can, but that was gonna get away, you know.
In the springtime, you know, when you have the chances of like this week, they're small, but 20% chance all week. You get 10, 20 hundredths, you know, it brings you down to that level where you can responsibly burn. And then in a day later, it might be right back up where you can. So, I mean, it does allow people to clear some of their land off in a responsible manner. But then again, when the conditions get tough, it's automatic. Whereas a broad ban, you guys can't get together quick enough to reverse it for a couple of days and put it back on. So that's where we're at, but whatever everyone wants to do, we'll support.
What do you think, Lee?
Well, in theory, that sounds okay.
Right, I know what you're saying. Exactly, I know what you're saying.
And here's my, I guess what I'm listening here. Then maybe we need to push, and I don't know if it's legal or not, but our biggest problem, whether it's dry or not, is guys not calling in and control burn.
That's what they said in the paper, they wanted people to call in
So
control.
that would work, you know, if guys are gonna call in their control burn. And I farmed, and I totally understand that whole thing, and I farmed out there where there's acres being replaced or recovered. And I'll shut my shop down for anybody that needs help. I've locked the door. The only time it pisses me off is when somebody was just too lazy, they got too much to burn. And when you pull up on scene, he wants to know why you're there. And you say, well, this is right along the highway, you didn't call it in. And he looks you straight in the face and says, I got 10 of these going. Well, he's not watching any of them. That's the guy I want to see get slapped around a little bit. So I totally agree.
And I think that's the guy that lights it on fire and tears off to the next one and lights that on fire.
And that's the guy, and that's the guys we got problems with.
Right.
Like you say, everybody's getting punished or
Yeah.
everybody's getting restricted. Let's not say
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
you know, so to me, I think, you know, we talked about it at the board meeting last night, that it's okay to follow the weather, you know. My suggestion would be, they do have a forecast, just like, you know, the weatherman. So if it's gonna be red flag tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow morning, you put, tomorrow morning is, because you're gonna get that guy that, oh shit, tomorrow I gotta get this burnt before tomorrow afternoon. He goes out, lights a match, whether it's just a cattail flue, whether there's trees or anything in it. Now it's punking, the wind comes up, the wind switches. Now you've got a problem, a few hundred feet away across the road or whatever. It's not, if it's in the middle of a quarter, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But how many are in the middle of a quarter that aren't touching the road or walking along the lake shore? It's a very complicated problem. And I think it's worth trying. I mean, I think that's a fair place to go, but I think you also need to legitimize the fact that when guys get going and they're gonna start abusing the compromise, if you wanna call it that you're gonna have to come back and say, this is enough. Because like I said, I'll stop, I'll lock my doors, I'll fight fire all day long. I like helping people. But it's the ones that don't care about my time or their neighbor's property, those are the guys that, I'm sorry, caused all this.
Absolutely.
That's my take.
What if we, seen what the rest of this week did as far as rainfall? I mean, they got it in about, like, 3 out of the next 5 days or 6, 7 days.
Well, like this
potential rain coming, but I don't think we're gonna get it like this out.
Well, but the thing is, if it, it's gonna move it, it's gonna give you a window that's this big and you need a window that's that big. That's where I see the problem. And, the state had a bird ban on a number of years ago. And state's attorney wouldn't have prosecuted me because that was going from hour to hour. The red flag would come up and then it'd be a warning and then it'd be, they post a red flag and then it would drop back to just a warning. So then you could bird. Well, it was jumping around. He had no way of enforcing that because you could say, oh, I heard the radio that was off and then a half hour later it would be on again. So it has to be a day by day thing. It can't be from noon until whatever, or from 8 to noon or whatever. It has to, you have to figure out some way of getting that thing at, Thursday, there's a possibility, so no burning Thursday. Yeah.
And then how are you gonna open that? Is it just the farmers or is it anybody to burn?
That's anybody.
It would have to be anybody. Like yesterday, for instance, Ramsey County was listed as moderate. So everywhere else around us, I believe it was Ramsey, Cavalier, and Welsh County, I believe, that yesterday. For whatever reason, we were listed as moderate. That would have been the day where you could burn. The way, I believe if I read it right, the rest of Nelson counties, the way that theirs is worded, if it's moderate or below, you can burn. If it's high or above.
No, you can burn if it's very, very high, extremely high, or red flag are the 3 categories you can't burn as of now.
So you can still burn it high.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's different.
And that's
counties.
something you guys can choose on what level you want to do.
Well, and Ward County's doing something similar. There's a few different counties that are doing it off of that rangeland index. And to Lee's point, I asked this question when we put it in place last week and I didn't have enough information at that point. How do they determine what the index is? When is it determined? How often does it switch? So I went and did a little research. The rangeland index is determined daily around 5 a.m. Central. So the Weather Service in consultation, I believe, with a few different entities, they're the ones that set up the rangeland forecast, and they do it every day at 5. So if you knew that the fire started that day and it was a high day, and we said you can't burn on a high day, well, we would know if it was started that day that they put a match when they weren't supposed to. So it would give us some flexibility, like you said, to at least allow people to, when the weather is correct, to go out and do some things. But I still do have that same concern where, like you said, if, I gotta get my burning done today, then they stick a match in, and then the next morning the wind kicks up or something, and then it gets away from you. Because that one day they had that window, is that a good approach either? I don't know, because they're still gonna cause trouble.
Or instead of burning this field this day, if you know you can get away with it, it looks like the wind's gonna pick back up, you go and do exactly what
Yeah,
we're talking
you
about.
put
which
the
is
10
go and
matches in.
Burn 10 fields, and you don't wanna see that either.
We all know there's people that do that. They throw a match in, then they go over to the next one, they throw another match in.
It's big enough in my area that there's dollars behind these cattail sloughs. Big revenue. And if you're talking about a 600-acre outlife, or not outlife, like a coulee flat or whatever that they haven't seeded in 30 years, and they're talking about maybe producing some revenue off this thing, a match will be dropped.
1980, that's where the crops were, was in the low ground. High ground, it was that high.
What's surprising is that it wasn't burned last fall.
Last fall, we never froze till way late.
Yeah.
So the grass was green until we had that
Difficult to get it
the
going.
snow we had, and
They did
then,
very, very
and
well.
then that was kind of it.
We had a hard time getting ditches going and stuff.
So it seemed like the entire world was on fire last fall.
But now we're dry enough, these guys can go out there and make some fire breaks too.
So looking at the rangeland index, and yesterday we were in blue, and they were in yellow. I can't imagine it'd be a very good idea on the western side of the state, based on blue, to drop a match anymore.
Well, even yesterday,
Oh, wind was windy.
there was, well, but, we were moderate or whatever it was. In the morning, yeah, it looked like a good idea, but by 11 o'clock, it was 20 mile an hour, the humidity had dropped to 32.
And that's our biggest argument is at 5 AM, you're making a judgment call on a whole day that the wind changed by 11 o'clock and it's no longer advisable at all, but they didn't change the map.
Well, they're trying, and they're trying their best too, like anything. They're just giving you their best estimate of what that day should be like and if you should be able to do something, and it's just a basis. The only thing I could say is instead of, if we wanted to allow the capability, maybe we would just allow it in the low category. Because the moderate seems to be the one where we run into problems because it's the question of, but if we catch a rain, maybe it'll drop down the low for 3 or 4 days or whatever, and then people can get their stuff done, and then we would, maybe that would give us a little bit more leeway, because it hasn't been in low for a long time.
I got a question for your state attorney. Can they put some teeth in to, having, forcing people to call it in? I know the LEC is busy, but it's been kind of the consensus that they'd rather field a phone call for somebody trying to do it right than field somebody frantic and then calling us. So, is there a possibility for doing that without it being home rule or anything like that?
So you certainly could add a provision like that. Right now, the teeth that we have is, this is a B misdemeanor. But based on what I'm hearing from you and kind of some of the history, when you go to this on-off type arrangement, or you get a permit, you don't, it leads to inconsistent enforcement.
Right.
And that makes it hard for the sheriff's department to do anything unless you're seeing somebody drop the match. And that makes it hard for my office to prosecute something. So, you could add it, but it doesn't mean they're gonna call it in. They might see 2, 3, 4 field fires and they say, okay, the Johnsons are burning, the Andersons are burning, I'm gonna start burning.
Okay, so not to interrupt you, but so if you've got something in there about calling, if it's control burn, you've got something in there, you have to call control burn again. And maybe not one of those 3 guys call, and they all get popped. Is that a possibility? Because if they haven't called it in as a control burn, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When it started, or who lit the first one, or who lit the last one, or it doesn't even matter what the index is.
Sure. However, under the statute, I need to be able to prove somebody started the fire. It doesn't, just because they didn't call it in, that's not enough to prosecute them. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's the hang up.
Yeah. They could say, my neighbor dropped a match in the slough.
And that's how
Or click the cigarette.
and that's what I feel is wrong with this whole thing, is proving it's done. And I would think law enforcement should have other things to do personally than drive around the back roads.
They do.
I started.
They have a lot more. Believe me. Look at our jail bill, you know, look at our jail.
I think if you look at the concept of the burn ban isn't necessarily, it's enforcement, but it's not necessarily enforcement. It's the fact that we're stating that it's a really bad
It's a
idea
bad
to do this
idea
right
to
now.
burn.
It's a leadership thing to say this is a really bad idea. And if you get 90% of the people following it and saying this is a bad idea, then at least you have you'll have enough people with common sense to say, I don't want to cause trouble for you guys, I'm not gonna stick a match in something. But the enforceability of it is always an issue. I mean, that's never a question.
What do you think, Lee? Do you think we should just leave it closed for a week and then see? Does that make sense, or let's get a consensus?
Well, to me, Ed.
Let's see if it rains.
Are you gonna do this every Monday morning?
Probably.
Well, I mean, I'm saying, you know, now.
We did every Monday morning in the flood,
Right,
going the other way, so.
right. But what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
bother me to do it every Monday morning now, not a bit.
Well, but then, you know, that's.
This is
you
the
know,
easy part.
You still got, you know, 7 people or whatever here that are donating their time to something that. If that's what you guys want to do it on a weekly thing or whatever, and that works, you know, I mean, it comes down to you guys.
I think I'd be more comfortable making a weekly call than.
You're all right with that? That's what I'm hoping.
Basically than trying to figure out how to do it this day and not this day and this day and not this day.
Even if we're not.
What do you think, Jim? You heard from you.
I probably agree with a weekly call, based on, you know, it's dry and we predict rain, but we're not getting rain. And rain could happen, and then next week we could go into a low for a couple of days, but the following week we may have to go right back again.
This should be a hell of a lot easier to deal with.
I would think
flood.
if you could get together once a week and make a, you know, judgment call on it would be appropriate. But I'm not handling all those grass areas either, but it seems that would be the logical.
I think we're looking at like a 3-week months. If we don't get any of that kind of crops or whether they burn or not.
Well, you'll see till 4th of July.
I get that, but what I'm saying is you're gonna see a lot of them turn by the.
Turn green?
No, a lot of the ground turn.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but if it stays this way, you're gonna have people that won't want to put seed in the ground.
Well, the thing about the weekly thing too is, you know, you get 2 inches of rain, then you don't have to do it every day.
Right.
You know, I mean.
Yep.
That's the key.
You know.
Well, that
Financial help,
right, is you hope you get 10 inches of rain and then we don't have to have this
Right.
discussion.
I'll take 10 inches over the next 3 months.
But some of this goes back to what Austin said as well. If you decide on Monday that this whole week is gonna be a burn ban week, but Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are the perfect days to burn this because they're out seeding it, they're gonna drop the match anyway.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, I understand this argument, but it's almost disingenuous to me because it's like saying, well, we don't need speed limits on the highway because the cops can't pull everybody over.
Right.
And people are gonna speed anyway. It's like, well, you know, you can make that argument about any law you want or any mandate you want. Oh, well, people are just gonna do what they're gonna do. Yeah, some of them will.
Right.
But as a society, we say.
What I'm contemplating if I'm throwing both ideas in my brain right now, going between following the ND response page and putting the language in there from, say, moderate and below, you can burn. Moderate or, you know, high and above, you can't. Is that better than trying to pull a week at a time, saying no, when these are 3 good days during this week that you could do it?
Well, and I mean, I'd like to believe that if it did rain unexpectedly or something, that we would probably get together and have a quick meeting to take it off. You know what I mean? If something that was really unexpected occurred, you could get a meeting together and have that changed, right?
Sure.
But
The days of Zoom now, we could probably do that very quickly.
right, and so I think you know, we're trying to help the county, and it behooves us to be as responsive and effective as possible, you know, on everybody's behalf. But like I said, you can usually, I mean, a 7-day forecast is reasonably accurate, right? A weather forecast. And you can say, okay, there's a 0% chance of rain anytime this week. Could still rain, and if it did, then you probably want to get together and say, go ahead. But That's just my opinion.
But my main concern is, I shouldn't say concern, but is this long term. We don't know how this is gonna play out. Like you said, I mean, we probably have 3, 4, 5 weeks of, people are gonna start really hitting hard in the field. But that's just the first flush of this. So then all of a sudden, if we get that, and granted, I know I'm talking the long-term viability here, but you're talking, so then what happens if we don't catch rain this next couple of weeks? Then all of a sudden we're talking, are we gonna get together every week for the whole summer to determine what's going to happen and what's not gonna happen that week?
It's basically a disaster, so you gotta kind of treat it like one.
I know, but I'm just saying, cause it's just,
Well, I would say if we don't get any kind of rain in the next couple of weeks, it's gonna be a no-brainer.
yeah. And I agree,
I mean,
I agree.
At that point, you can say, okay, make it 2 weeks, or, you don't have to say, I mean, if it gets dry and stays dry, it ain't gonna matter. I mean, to be completely honest, you could say until we get a half an inch of rain, this is this way, and then approach it again. I do have a question for the state's attorney. Sorry, I don't.
I'm both.
Oh, okay. Isn't there implied responsibility if there's a fire on your land? I mean, if I start a fire on, if I burn my garbage, gets away, jumps the road and burns the pen out, I'm responsible for that. So aren't you still responsible for the fire on your land if it's in the middle of a quarter in a slough?
So I'd have to research it to give you a better answer. I know that's a lawyer answer.
No, I don't want a half an answer. If you don't have the answer, that's fine.
I'd rather tell you. I'd like to look it up and let you know.
Okay.
That being said, if a fire does jump to another piece of property and we can prove some kind of intent, that could be an arson too,
Right.
If the wind catches it and it burns down a barn, is that malicious? That's a question for the court, not
Right. No. But what I'm saying is, you said, well, did your neighbors start, they're gonna play that you can't prove it.
Yeah.
But if it's on your property, you have some responsibility to what goes on there.
It might not necessarily be malicious, but it might be negligent.
Let me look into it, Lee. I'll let you know.
Cool, thank you.
I got a question for Jason. Would you use, that's easily accessed, you pull it up on your phone, that's easy for people to get on and look at? I mean.
Yeah, North Dakota response.com and then burn ban, it's pretty easy.
You can pull it up and.
Well, and my follow-up with that was, maybe that's a good way to do it, that's easily accessible to people. Because getting a hold of everybody in the county, and a lot of people are just gonna say, well, I don't know.
Well, that's on us too. We're gonna have to.
Get out and
So either,
Yeah.
we gotta get together, put an ad, in the paper, get some radio time.
The county in Nelson County, they put it on their emergency manager site, daily.
Yeah, and that's what Warren County's been doing, they push it out through their Facebook page.
But we still gotta get everybody the information of that.
Just let them know that this is,
Because right now, everybody in the state, every county has some type of a burn restriction, whether it's something like Nelson or just a blanket like ours, other than Griggs, Towner, and there's 2 counties down in the southwest corner of the state. I don't know which ones those are because I don't remember their names, but way down in the southwest corner of the state. That's Slope. No, Slope, Stark's got it. Yeah, so it's, maybe Slope and Dunn or whatever they are down there. But maybe it's Bowman. Slope and Bowman. So there's only 4 out of 53 that don't have something on right now. But yeah, I mean, you can pull it up, but you just Google rangeland index fire. Yeah.
But it's easy to get at, and that's what I was getting at, easy for people to access.
Yeah, it's easy to
Yeah,
get.
it takes you 2 seconds.
It's got your red flag warnings on there and everything.
I like the, I'm fine with the concept of keeping it on for a week as is, seeing if we catch some rain, meeting next week. But I like the concept long-term of some type of a progressive structure where we're gonna say you can only burn when you're in moderate or low or whatever, and then we push that out and then we try to educate people.
Well, if you're gonna go to the step process, I would do that right away.
Yeah.
You can still, if if you feel it's needed to meet every week after that, that's fine. I think it's worth a try. I think it's a compromise to let guys, so they don't feel like they're punished, so they're, so they, I realize that's kind of a politician answer, that's not what I'm trying to get at. But we're trying to be fair here too, because there are guys that
Are good.
well, they're not only good, but there's also guys that aren't gonna burn a 40-acre field to get a half an acre. There's guys who are gonna do, burn 240 acres because they're gonna get 235 of them back.
Yeah.
Those are the guys you don't wanna, if you're gonna burn shit off, oops. Just because you like to see it black when you see, there's no reason to do that. If you're only gonna get a half an acre, then really look at it and say, why am I doing this? But I think if we could get, maybe some radio time and, if paper could do something to educate people that this is the website you go to, or, you go to the emergency manager. That's gonna be the key of the whole thing, is getting it out to the public that you have this resource to realize when it's good to burn or okay to burn and not.
And that could be on indefinitely, right? I mean, just forever, that could be the policy of.
Until you do get ready.
Yeah.
Another thing that we've done in our district is people were afraid to call fires because they thought they'd get in trouble. And we had to do a lot of educating on, no, you're saving us a trip for a nonsense fire. And it took a while, but now we get a lot of our people that do call them in. But a lot of people are afraid to call them in because they just think, oh God, I'm gonna call the law enforcement center.
Right.
It's like, I make a call for them. I mean, if they're afraid to call in or whatever, I've always said, I'll give you the section number, the quarter number, and I'll make a call for you.
So this is mostly just a question. The one thing that I'm thinking about, maybe I'm totally wrong, is if you're on a day-by-day sort of thing, it's like having a more complicated machine, right? There's more points where wires can get crossed and things can get messy. That's my feeling, is if you're going, oh, we can burn today, we can't burn tomorrow, we can burn the next day, we can't burn the next day. I mean, it just, would be my hesitation. I agree that as a long-term system, that probably works a lot better. But right now, with how dry it is, I was just thinking it might make more sense to be stable so that people can plan. You know what I mean? So that's my only question to everybody, here is there value in that, or am I, I know people are perfectly able of looking up whether they can burn on their phone, but still, every time you're changing it, it's like changing the speed limit on the highway.
It'd be easier to enforce it though if this was the rule. This is what we're gonna go with, and this is the new standard that.
But not if you change it on a daily basis though.
Right.
That I think would be very difficult for calling your law enforcement out to enforce something that changed yesterday. There's this matrix here on that website. Lists all the things that you can do under moderate or low or high or very high conditions. It's a little confusing, but it's there. Under high conditions, there is no open burning, but you can have recreational fireworks, device control, smoking, and vehicles, as long as you monitor activity, you have basic hand tools available for quick response, have extinguisher water available, fire should be contained in a fire ring or organic material removed from immediate area. That's what their recommendations on that matrix is. And then it kind of changes as it gets further down the line, but I think that further confuses the general public as well, Can I or can't I? Is it this condition or that condition?
The problem with all of this conversation is that personal responsibility and common sense play a huge role in it. Like under that, you just said you can shoot fireworks off in the high recommendation category. Well, yeah, if I'm on a paved asphalt parking lot, yeah, maybe shooting fireworks off would be the worst thing. If I go out in the middle of a CRP field and start shooting off fireworks, probably a real dumb idea.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes into common sense and personal responsibility, and enforcement of it is very difficult. It's just a matter of trying to tell people that we think this is important enough to tell you don't do something, essentially.
At the end of the day, it comes down to a volunteer fire departments that are responding to these calls, and what you guys would like to see as far as restrictions are concerned. How busy have you been? How busy do you want to be?
Well, the thing is, I don't, to be completely honest with you, we're probably gonna, this make a change on one call, one way or the other, to be honest with you.
No.
You know, because if you got guys that have got a 240 acre piece, they're gonna pay the $1,000 fine.
Sure.
They'll probably have the check written for you before you get, I mean, seriously, because they're gonna get 200 acres of it, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
The guys who don't care, they're just gonna throw the match where they're, you know, then they're gonna be the guys that you're gonna have to figure out, well, shit, can I prosecute this guy or can't I? Because now I gotta prove it. I get, to me, right, and I don't know on this is coming off the top of my head, and that's usually a bad thing. But, I would say you're gonna leave it as it is for a week, see if we get the rain, see what difference that makes. If we can, the rest of this week, get it out that what the resources are to figure out, put it back on the guy with the match. You know, tell him, you got Ramsey, go to the Ramsey County website, click on the emergency manager, he's got it there, put it out the website. That you can pick up on your phone, whether it's National Index or, you know, some state, hammer it, you get on with Eric Arndt. Tell people to educate themselves. Right now, we've got a week. You've got a week to educate yourself. Nothing's going to happen. And if you want to go week by week, and whether you implement a stepped program or you want to just do it for a week, I'll take the chance on the week. I'm not the fire chief, but if it looks like the week is going to be moderate, and that's the level you choose, you know, if 4 out of 5 days or 4 out of 7 days is moderate, I guess we'd eat the other 3. Mm-hmm. That gives guys a chance to do what they financially that they need to do, and hopefully that will, at least the guys that are just gonna recreational burn, because there's guys out there like to see that field black. It's, you know, I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's back from the 1800s when everything was plowed. I don't know, it's instilled in us. You know, I like to see it nice and green, and I like to see it nice and black when it's supposed to be black when I plant. That's just the way it was. You know, if we could hammer the education part of it this week, leave the band on, and then if you guys, if the consensus is that there's if the forecast is for more than 4 or more days of moderate and moderate levels that you agree on, then that week is burn week. As opposed to dark week.
I got a question though, if we get called out to a fire and law enforcement doesn't show up, what steps do I take now? If this guy is in my community or possibly even a member of my department, how do I handle that?
So there are sections under the code, I mean, if the deputy is refusing to.
Well, or they're busy and we get called out to a fire, do I need to, as a chief, start taking down information, or it's gonna be pretty hard to punish my own volunteers, or, you know?
In theory, you could do a citizen's arrest.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it gonna fall back on the chief or the fire department for not following up with some of that?
Well, I think that portion is on law enforcement. And
Okay.
you know,
it's off my hands then, that's all I want.
I think the only thing that could be asked of you is the same thing you're already doing, which is record where it's burning.
Yeah.
Right? The appropriate authorities can take it from there. As long as you're doing that anyway, we're not asking you to make this.
That's all.
Unless you really want to.
Unless you wanna push your vigilante justice, so let's get that.
Okay, no, that was a question that I had.
If you're a volunteer, then I would polish in.
Oh, right.
I think, I don't know what we're gonna do as a whole, but I think one thing that has come out of this conversation as part of it is you talk education. I think part of it is a lot of farmers and just general people and the public need to learn how to burn properly. So that we don't run into all of these problems. I mean, you talk about backburning, you talk about making a fire line so something doesn't get away from you. I mean, there's too many people that, oh, I got a northwest wind, I'll go throw a match on the northwest corner of 160 acres and let it go. You know, instead of properly putting up a fire break and doing those things to make sure stuff doesn't go where it's not supposed to. I mean, so maybe that's something we could work on long term, you know, maybe you guys can teach us how we're supposed to do things. So we don't cause you guys problems long term.
That's a legitimate deal too. And there's days when fire breaks don't work.
No, I know, and I understand that, but I'm saying there's a proper way to, I mean, I watched when they burned, I don't remember, it was a piece of CRP or something, but it was something US Fish and Wildlife or whatever had the crew come in and do it. I mean, there's just a proper way to do things to decrease your risk of possible, you know, of it getting away.
Prescribed burn, the wind can't be over 10 miles, 7 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, just because it burns fast don't mean it's even burning clean.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets to a point where it will burn so fast, it's just taking the top off, it's not really doing.
Yeah, it actually burns better when you have less wind because you get, you know, just enough of a wind to push it down is when it burns properly. So, but I'm just saying long term, I think that's something to look into too, is talking, you know, trying to educate everybody how we should be doing this properly, because long term, it would probably cause you guys a whole heck of a lot less headache if everybody kind of knew what they were doing instead of just deciding to
A lot less headache too if they just take 2 minutes and call
that is
LEC on 662-5323.
And the ones that wanna do it right now.
That's part of
The
it.
ones that-
Probably right.
The ones that don't, go like 10 of them and go home. You know, I mean, that's, like I say, unfortunately, you get this group of people that cause problems for the whole county. And that's what happens.
But if you do lift the burn restriction, you know, I would like an emphasis made on calling in the controlled burns. You know, one of the greatest, you know, we don't want to be showing up to calls we don't have to, you know. That's where a lot of our exposure as firefighters is on the way to the call. The more we go out, the more likely something is going to happen, even not fire related.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm a farmer too, I'm on both sides of this. I desperately want to burn.
Yeah.
But, I also see the, you know, look at the other side, so.
Well, there's some counties within the state that have a fire emergency or a fire declaration from April 1st to October 31st that puts things in the hands of their emergency manager. And there's a burn ban in place on certain days based on the map there. We could do something similar to that. We could continue with the ban that we currently have in place for a period of time. We could, you know, we get together generally no further than 21 days in between our meetings. We could do something where we give Chris or myself, or a combination of both, the authority to place the burn ban on based on what our weather conditions dictate, or we could get together weekly, or we could just throw a match in it and let her burn.
See how many runs you go to, and see what kind of problems you're experiencing also should enter in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you know, my major concern is for you guys. You're all volunteers. This isn't your primary job. And the more fires, and like Doug said, the more fires you respond to, the more risk that you put yourselves, your equipment, your personnel in harm's way, whether it be on the way to the fire or at the fire itself. So,
our district hasn't had a call this spring.
not one.
Not one.
You just takes yourself.
Probably.
Well.
You're gonna have 3 this afternoon.
You've had several, haven't you?
We have.
Yeah.
We've been extremely busy.
And then we talked, and I do understand. Absolutely. No.
But, right, yesterday, no, we didn't go yesterday. But we have been busy.
And I know Dakota's had a couple.
Two grass fires. Others have been house and stuff.
But as well, and I was saying, not all of our fires were, a grass fire either. I mean, we had a house go up, I mean, it's everything. But, if we gotta go out and mess around with a slough at 2 a.m, we would have had our trucks 10 miles out of town when they needed to be out here to fight a structure fire at 2 a.m. also. It's a horse piece, and I'm sitting in the same place. I've got several guys that's what they need to do to reclaim their livelihood as well.
Yeah.
And it's no different for them either. I mean, they don't like shutting their equipment down to come and do what we have to do. I mean, I don't want to come across like I don't want them to burn either, because I've got stuff of my own that I want to burn too, but it's not near. My burning isn't gonna make me any money at the end of the year. Theirs is, and I understand that completely. Like I say, the only thing I worry about doing the week-to-week thing is if you say on Monday that, no, we're not burning this week, something changes, say Wednesday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday are the perfect days. All of a sudden Monday rolls around, hey, it's gonna be a good week, and it goes the other way. But this is the week that they can burn and conditions aren't ideal. That was the only reason why if you're gonna do something, maybe the day by day and going off of the ND response thing is the answer. Rain is the answer.
Rain. That's what I'm hoping for.
Really not.
Take a week break and let's see if it rains.
I mean,
if it don't, I guess we'll have to wait another week.
And that's a lot of why the burn bans are in place, is basically protect you guys and protect our counties. And that it wasn't the intent either to take away from trying to reclaim land, but it's just reclaiming land now when everything's so dry. We get some good shots of rain, like Sean said. I think we should be able to relook at this.
And, at least for myself on the county commission, I'd gladly drop whatever, the same way that you're expected to drop whatever you're doing and go out and fight a fire. I'm willing to drop whatever I'm doing to come back and sit in these chairs and remove it if it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Right. That's what I'm elected for.
Yep.
So I want to commit to you guys that we are doing our best to have it all make sense. My concerns are, I don't want to see, 10,000 acres go up.
Right.
My other concern is, I don't want to have every farmer in the county confused about whether they can burn or not. Right. And if they can today, can they tomorrow, all of that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think a little bit of consistency is actually helpful. It's useful.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't think anybody here is trying to punish anybody or say, be unreasonable. It's very dry.
I'll make the motion and go ahead and wait a week.
Or
decide then. We'll
ban
leave
on.
the burn up ban on for a week. And look at it in a week.
So you also planning to have a special meeting then, in a week?
The 13th.
Can we leave that open and we can call it on what notice? We only need an hour.
So
we were told every day.
under the open record, there's no minimum notice, but I recommend a 24-hour notice.
Okay.
We can make that decision Monday if we want to have a special meeting Tuesday.
Fair enough.
Does that sound fair enough to
All
everybody?
right.
I'll second that.
All right.
Austin, all right.
I'm happy with you guys, or whatever, I mean, that's.
Well, like Chris had mentioned, it does give us the opportunity to reclaim some of the costs, with a burn ban declaration in place, for fighting these fires, correct?
One more time?
That it creates an opportunity for us to reclaim some of these expenses associated with the fires.
Yes, if we have to.
If we have a burn ban in place.
Yeah, and if we have to reach out to other resources, yes.
If we have to have mutual aid. Yep, okay. All right.
Before you call the question, just one thing, I know I noted it last time, did we correct the grammar On the bottom of that, Sid's turner just brought it up to me, that his copy has incorrect grammar. I didn't know.
Yeah, come on, Michael.
Or penalties are one of the.
You know, I think we get the flag across. We'll be all right.
Is instead of our,
Make the change.
okay. All right, any further discussion?
Well, it should be the maximum penalties are.
Right.
Not penalty is, because it's up to 30 days in jail or $1,500 and or.
Penalties are is correct.
Penalties are.
Plural.
Oh, God, English language.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Everybody
Thank
for
you.
your dedication, your commitment.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And Chris, before everybody leaves, Chris doesn't want to make a big deal out of it, but he, just completed his certification for emergency management.
Hey.
Certification. Thank you.
Well done.
I think it would be a good idea, let's just throwing this out there because I've been fielding a lot of calls. I know Austin has, you probably have too. But if we get something on the radio that would just let everybody know what the plan was, you know, that it's gonna be revisited on Mondays and take it week by week.
Eric's pretty good at bugging me, so, and then tomorrow morning I do a coffee time following our commission meetings. And so he'll take snippets out of that and hopefully he pushes this one out there.
You can call and get on the radio
Quite
too, Sean.
frequently,
Yeah, I know, I've been on the radio, I think twice in last week or whatever, but I mean, I can do it, you can do it, and then, and I think.
I do wanna get the websites out and make
Yeah.
sure people
Yeah.
know that they can get to the county website.
We'll
Find that information.
we'll make sure that we get it on social media. That seems to be a good platform for.
Then you can plan a class for Adam, so you can show them how to.
Yeah. Come right along.
Thanks, guys, in trouble.
Thank
Just
you.
come right along.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Anybody need a break or, keep on going? Mr. Fieldson, yours.
Okay, to start off with, we got all the filters and oils and all the supplies for doing the service work on our 4th graders. So that bill was $5,972.67, so I'd like a motion to pay for that.
Move to next time.
Ready to get out of here. Ready to move.
I'll make the motion to approve. Motion to approve, paying for oil and filters. Are these roll call, these?
We're paying yes.
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Okay, Volk,
Aye.
Lightfon.
Aye.
Wakefield.
Aye.
Brown. Brick.
Aye.
All right, also, we have the invoice from KLJ for the design work. It's kind of an ongoing thing on the thin lift overlay on Ramsey County 3A for $9,395.88.
Move to pay.
Move to approve. We have a motion and a second to pay KLJ. Roll call, please.
Wakefield.
Aye.
Brown.
Aye.
Volk.
Aye.
Lightfon.
Aye.
Brick.
Aye.
Motion, all of our summer maintenance contracts, we got just about all of them in. To that list, we need to add fresh water in Ontario. So motion, and also just for information, we're doing some roads for the city of Devils Lake this year under our contracts. Yeah, first time, one of their ex-employees is bleeding our roads, but that's the way it goes, I guess.
I'll make a motion to approve signing all the agreements.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for chairman and auditor to sign the summer maintenance contracts. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion approved.
Okay, now the bid openings for our projects, list looks like this. We got it in front of you. First one on top is a gravel project. We had 4 bidders. See the prices there. The low bid was from Soper Construction for $63,800, and that's for the gravel on Turnback 17 up by Stark Weather. And there's 2 miles on the Ramsey Towner county line that's attached to that.
You recommend we take the low bid?
Yep.
Okay, so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we accept Soper Construction bid on the Turnback 17 county line project. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And next is our chip seal project, which is on 3A, like south of Hamden, and 9C over way on the west end or east end of the Ramsey line. And Morris Seal Coat was our low bid at $321,746. They've done our chip seals for the last 10, 12 years, something like that, and we like the work they're doing, so I would recommend that a little bit also.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the bid for Morris Seal Coat for the chip seal projects on 9A and 3A, 9C.
Correct.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And our hot mix overlays, Strata Corporation was the only one that submitted a quote, but they're within line of last year's price, so they're not trying to gouge us, so I recommend we accept their quote also.
So second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the bid from Strata Corporation for the hot mix overlays. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And lastly, for our materials is the roll up. We have 3 bids there also, so good competitive. Husky Energy out of Superior, Wisconsin was a low bid on both MC 800 and MC 3000, so I recommend we go with their bids.
So
Been moved and seconded that we accept the bid from Husky Energy for the MC 800 and the MC 3000. Supplies for Kevin. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Hey, any questions on that process?
Thank you.
All right. Most of the rest of this is just for information. The weight limits are in effect countywide now in Ramsey County. And I'm also gonna plan on hiring a part-time person to mow cemeteries again this year. Just for information, I don't know who it's gonna be yet, but. Year-end reports, we finally got those finalized. It looks like this, or it should be on your desk. I don't know if I got electronic copies either, but a lot of information, a lot of data that you're going over, but. So if you got any questions, I can certainly try and answer them.
What a report.
Yeah, the first page is our road, all of our roads, and the last 2 pages are all of our equipment. On the first page, I guess one thing that's, the big numbers stick out to me, so like on Ramsey 3B, we did all the crack sealing, which was $13,000, so at the end of the year, it adds up to cost quite a bit per mile, but that's the reason why. Another one that had big dollars was 7A. We did fix all the soft spots. Spent a lot of money fixing soft spots. Where's the other big one? 9B, we gravel or gravel, we just spot gravel now when we were fixing soft spots on our own. That's what we did.
Kevin, what falls in the miscellaneous generally?
Oh, like, let me think. Like maybe a sign. Signs on there.
Well, there's one for signs, so I was, that's actually why I was curious, because first I thought it would be signs, and then I saw that you have a separate column, so I was just curious.
4D, let's see. Oh, 4D, for instance, we put those culverts on in there, and we, fixed the shoulder that was washing out on the crossing, all the water crossings. 3A.
Whereabouts is that, on 4D? What?
4D is between 8 and 7. Another expensive one. 3A. Oh, we did some crack seal on 3A also. Well, that's what went into the crack seal. Well, maybe that got turned around there. But like culverts, paver patches, that pushbacks, like we push back snow, we didn't do any of that, but.
Like at 9B, there's a $2,100 under miscellaneous.
Oh, now I see what you're talking about. Okay.
There's quite a bit under that miscellaneous, if you look at each.
Yeah.
You know what, I will have to look into that and get back to you. Okay.
Usually we put a lot into that 7, 8.
Yeah, all on soft spots, yeah.
Think we have it in shape this year, for this year?
Hope so. I mean, you know, last year was a bad year for soft spots, but I mean, we plan to fix some more soft spots if they show up there. We're gonna fix that soft spot on 8, on the end of 8, the one by the Walsh County line, so.
7A, that's Rocket Road,
Yep.
the whole stretch of Rocket that's gravel.
There's a little piece of that that's asphalt, so
Yeah, that's B.
right?
What's C then?
C is the gravel part on the east side of.
East side of 1, there's a little stretch there too, right?
Yeah. And that doesn't see the truck traffic, but, you know, gravel coming into their county.
Not like 8 does there on that little stretch from Walsh. That's always, it's knocked out.
On 8, the Walsh County side is pavement, so they use that quite a bit.
Get more calls on 7A than the other road in the county.
Just about, yeah.
7A and that little stretch of 8 is the ones I always get calls on.
Yeah.
That's where I'm saying, I think it would be reasonable if we put together some type of trying to do a base work on it like we did on the truck road or something. Maybe we could do just stretches of 7A that are always a trouble, and then maybe like on 8, I think it's basically just from the curve down, and then that east stretch there, like you said, where we're gonna try to fix up there. Maybe it would be beneficial to try that. Maybe we got a little bit of COVID money we could maybe throw at it or something like that. It wouldn't cost a ton. It only cost us what? For the truck route, I can't ever remember.
About 90, roughly 100,000.
For, was it
3.5
miles? So maybe we could, spend a little money and use some of those spots and see if we can make them a little bit better.
What was the figure you used, 100?
Yeah, for 3.5.
So it's about 30 grand a mile, give or take.
We got 56 in this last year.
Yeah. Well, a lot of gravel on there.
I think part of it too is, we keep dumping gravel into the holes, which is what you have to do. But it's like anything, the road just kind of keeps doing this. And then when it's, so if we did a grind up and then we'd get it to reshape it, maybe we'd be able to get some of that water. I think that's part of the problem, especially on 8. When they start hauling gravel across there and it's soft, holy man, it just turns into a lake in the middle, where the water just can't get anywhere.
Well, I was thinking for this year to fill in the cement.
Yeah, try that.
And then if that doesn't work, we'll have all that extra base material anyway, put in with the following year with the base 1, or base 1.
Okay.
So I think for this summer, we'll try to till in the concrete, it's not concrete, it's cement.
Okay.
And then see how that holds up.
Okay. Yeah,
That's something we can do ourselves.
Yeah, just so we can try to reshape it a little bit to try to get it, just to move a little bit more water off the top of the road, I think.
When they fill in that cement, they can still blaze and everything?
No, we cover it back up with more gravel. You can blade it, but it comes up
So
with
it's just a base,
bases.
it's basically just a
Yep,
base.
it's a base. But you can still till it up and put that base one in. So it's not like it's wasted.
Right. So it's mixable.
Yep. The only thing is when you hit it with the motor grader, it gets some little pieces in that. They cause.
It's better than that fabric.
Yeah, the fabric. Once you get that
I've noticed a
fabric.
lot of places that put fabric down, which you haven't seen, but last year, fabric came through. And it's a mess when they go back through and blade it. Tear it out.
Once you rip
Putting
that
gravel
fabric.
back on it, it is a mess.
The cement really helps underneath the fabric, and that's what we.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. Otherwise, it just pushes that fabric up and catch it. It's
Once you tear that fabric, it's lost its good.
match.
Yeah.
What happened to my place?
You think we can do something with 7A this year, so we can get it in the process of, you know.
It'll be interesting to see how it is this spring, because it was really burnt last fall.
Yeah.
But all of our roads were really pretty burnt last fall, so.
I was over about a month ago, and I thought the west end was, the last west third.
Yeah.
It started falling. You were right on the last Friday afternoon. And kept going, and then I thought, this shooting stop by this side, you know, that was at least a month ago.
Yeah. You know, it's like over the weekend, water starting to pump out, so that'll be a good time. We'll see what happens. So the last two pages are our vehicles. Nothing really pops out there, but the one piece of equipment that is expensive is our farm tractor, which we tore apart, and fixed the transmission on, so that we can use it there. That's right, and about 2/3 of the way down the first page. And that last column should say, not cost per mile, cost per mile or hour. Some of these are limited by hours. Any questions there?
Who's doing most of the repairs for you? Yeah.
A lot of them we do ourselves, but we see the outside repairs and outside parts, that's somebody else.
Yeah, try.
Nice report, Kevin, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alright. Let's see. Oh, the surveillance camera, just for information, for the drug task force. The quote was $844.62. With the 5-year warranty, and I talked to DCI, and they said they would pay for all of it.
So the yard should be fairly covered?
Also, knock on wood,
No more problems lately?
nope, nothing lately.
DCI still use that North Canyon? Are they some?
The task force, it's not, yep. Yep. They do. Half of it, we use the other half. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Anybody have anything else for Kevin?
I will get to the bottom of the miscellaneous part, and if there's any more questions, feel free to ask on them reports.
Oh, I was gonna ask you a question. Are we still out doing crack sealing work?
Pretty much,
Okay. I had the question asked to me by, somebody from Edmore. Is it possible that, cause they can't, they got like one little stretch of pavement in their whole town. Is it possible they could piggyback on us doing crack sealing or when we do chip seals, things like that, to do those little stretches of road?
Sure, we've done it in the past. Okay. Well, the Cove Road is a good example. We tied that to our.
Yeah, where we could tie it to our system to help them out because, they can't bring somebody in just for that little stretch because it's cost prohibitive from that standpoint of bringing somebody in with all the, and if we could, what does it cost to chip seal like a mile or not chip seal, crack seal like a mile of road?
Right, depends on how many cracks, but I suppose you could figure Oh, man, yeah, I almost have to look at it, to be honest.
Okay, well, I'm just kinda curious, cause I was just asked that question, cause I know there's, certain, some of the towns have little stretches of pavement and stuff, if we could maybe help out a little bit. Be
We
something
did
to
an
look at.
estimate for Starkweather last year, I don't know if you.
We did, what did you say?
Starkweather, their streets.
Oh, we did, okay.
Are you familiar with how many cracks is everybody?
No, I'm sure plenty.
That was about $3,000, so,
Okay.
There's quite a few cracks there.
Okay. Well, I'll tell them to give you a call and see maybe we can make it work for them, maybe we can go through it for them. I know they don't have a lot of money, but maybe we could figure out a way to help out a little bit.
We do the Grand Island State Park, I mean, the park itself, so we do quite a bit of.
Okay, I didn't know that, see, I'm learning things, glad I asked.
All right, portfolios. Start with Mr. Commissioner Lightfon.
I don't have a whole heck of a lot, it's been pretty quiet. At a county housing authority meeting last week, everything seems to be going somewhat well over there. We got our new executive director running, so he's doing well. Learning, drinking through the fire hose. A lot of stuff to learn, in those specialized programs with everything, so he's learning though. For Devil's Lake, we're supposed to meet tomorrow, but we're not going to, so we're going to be meeting on the 21st, I believe. I don't think what else we got going on. We had Extension in talk to us. It's good to see they got their part-time person hired, so that's nice. Been looking for a while, so that's fantastic. State's attorney both sitting over there. I gotta come in and visit with him and bug him, but I know he's busy, so. I always feel bad bothering busy people.
I bug him enough for both of us.
Like, I should come in and just visit with you. It's like, but boy, I know you've got 1,000 things going on, so. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet.
Mr. Volk?
I haven't gotten word to the recorder treasurer we talked about earlier. Lake access, they ordered the steps for the 3 sites. 57 Bridge, across the dike and the airport road. Mike Lake Road, Mike Lake Road access. Game and Fish is gonna, improve the parking lot up there. They're gonna gravel it and stuff. So
U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
yep, so that should be put to bed, hopefully. And Fair Board, we got the wrestler club to come out 24 June to set up the tents for them and take them down on 28 June. And that will be the 25th to the 27th for that. And they had a rodeo company come up and visit for a possible rodeo.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The only other thing I have, I know it's not part of mine, this deal here, we can talk after. We're to have some information on how to Camp Jackson.
Oh.
Okay, well, you just stole it from me. I was gonna say, the only thing I have is sort of related to the sheriff's department is Blaine was telling me when we were over at Bremer that looks like they have facilities that are open to train our deputies.
So I can bring it up right now.
Yeah.
If you don't mind it. The BIA, they're having the drug schooling out there. And the shooting area that they have, we are actually gonna bring these systems in. And I have a contact, I was hoping he was here today, Wade Creighton, he can contact that. And if he needed to get any more information, the guy to contact over at camp is marked out. But it sounds like they're bringing 2 of these systems in.
Would the city police department be able to use that as well?
Yeah, and it sounds like when they are doing the schooling, to contact this Creighton, and a lot of it would be able to piggyback on that one without any cost.
Wonder if the city knows that would be available to them.
You know, so
I know.
if you want me to call this Creighton guy,
I can go talk to both Sheriff Nelson and Chief Kanowski and let them know.
I can give you this number and stuff here. You want to?
Yeah.
It's Wade Creighton.
Write it down on this.
Because it looked like a very good system, but it's very expensive.
Yeah, they're just gonna expand onto the system that we already have.
Okay. Wonderful.
They have room in their classes?
Yeah, and that's where, when I talked to Mark Top, he said to get a hold of his weight crate, and when the DIA put on a drug schooling, they would be able to piggyback it off on there. And they're looking for more, Camp Rapids looking for more too, to bring more people out there.
Just so we don't blast this phone number all over, social media, tell me after the meeting.
Otherwise, everybody's using call.
I do know that, part of that funding that we gave to Sean Root for the old ambulance building to convert that for a training facility, they would offer that up to this type of simulator for law enforcement as well. So we'd have the room if the county and city decided to go on it on their own. I think Sean has offered up that facility for, because you do need a little bit of space in order to operate it, otherwise you're in a virtual reality world and, stepping on things and punching walls and things like that, so.
And then as far as everything else, this probably isn't the right soapbox to be standing on, but it's the one I got. I don't know if everyone's aware, but the City Center Motel has become a homeless shelter that the tribe purchased. And now there is a request for a special use permit going before the city to turn the multi-service building into another homeless shelter. And speaking as someone who has a vested interest in downtown and talking to all of the downtown business owners and building owners, there's a great deal of concern in terms of the general feeling of downtown has been changing quite a lot. And so something that I've been mulling over in my mind is it might be worth having a discussion between Ramsey County, the city of Devils Lake, and the Spirit Lake Nation about potentially building a dedicated homeless shelter. As opposed to picking up bits and pieces here and there, and and I just wanted to raise that to you all and see, if there was any interest in that, because we have a real homelessness problem in Devils Lake now.
Well, and the question I had on it when I saw that they were having a meeting about the special use permit on it is our previous homeless, I shouldn't say old, but our previous homeless shelter shut down then, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And in visiting with them previously, I don't know if it was a COVID issue or if it was a volunteerism issue or what the situation is, but I mean, that building, is it being utilized currently?
I don't believe so.
I mean, so it's all structured and set up to be used as that, in that function. So why wouldn't we try to figure out a way to reutilize that building?
Well, you're talking the Hope Center?
Well, the one next to the Hope Center was where the homeless shelter was currently located, or previously located, I should say. And I don't have any answers to questions. I was just thinking, because I know that I had talked with, because they didn't need their funding for this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know what occurred that, I think part of it was just COVID concerns,
right.
Because they had all volunteers, and I think a lot of them were of the population that was older that probably didn't want to have the possibility of contracting the illness, which is completely understandable. But I always kind of was under the assumption that they were going to get restarted again after hopefully things calmed down a little bit, but apparently that isn't going to be the case. So I just was kind of curious about information about what was occurring more than anything.
Well, a little background. That building was owned by the Hope Center, which is a private, non-profit charitable organization. And back in March of last year, a year or so ago, the homeless shelter stopped offering in-person homeless services at that location because of COVID. And so, but they were still paying their rent. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was something to maintain their space. In December, they sent a letter that they would no longer be interested in renting that space from the Hope Center. Hope Center decided to expand their food service capabilities and repurpose that area that was dedicated to the homeless. About a month later, the Homeless Coalition decided to change their mind. At that time, the homeless, or the Hope Center Board of Directors decided not to go forward with that direction and continue down the path that they had changed to and reutilize that space. And so the Homeless Coalition was out of space.
Okay.
And so that.
So now the Homeless Coalition is the one with this proposal to move to a different locale then, but it's the same individuals basically that previously ran the homeless shelter.
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was kind of confused about what was occurring. Was it a different group of individuals trying to start something because there was a gap? Was it the same group of individuals that just lost their space?
Well, I think in the whole interim of that whole thing, Spirit Lake Nation purchased the City Center Motel.
Yeah.
Whether their intention was to house homeless people in there, I'm not sure. But they had purchased the City Center Plaza, or City Center Hotel.
Yeah.
Downtown. And from my understanding now, the Homeless Coalition is looking to.
Right.
And so you're up against, you've got, maybe half a dozen transients that live in Roosevelt Park. Like really are just there. You have 2 shelters. Potentially 2 again. I'm not arguing that it's not really important to have facilities for people, but when you're having the problem essentially exported from a different community into your community, right? Because that's essentially what the tribe has done. I think it would be better, instead of ad hoc trying to figure out how to deal with all of this, if all of the entities that are affected, and I believe that Ramsey County is one of them, although probably the least out of the 3, could get together. I think it would be better if we had one facility. And my preference would be that facility not be in downtown Douglas Lake. But that's my opinion. But even if you had one facility that was large enough and had, the proper attendance, I just think it would be a much better situation for all of us and everybody involved. So I just wanted to bring it up. I know that this isn't something that none of you look like you're going to jump on the idea of chasing that, but.
Well, I'm not fundamentally opposed or
I'm not either.
in favor.
I'm not either.
It's just
How do you go about it?
Yeah, my concern is, I shouldn't even say concern, but my question is long-term viability of the concept of a homeless shelter is good, but and that's a question for the Homeless Coalition and how they were housing people previously.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those people were continual people that came back every night? How many of them were maybe you caught them for a couple of weeks and then they figured out something, that kind of situation? Because to me, the solution to long-term homelessness isn't necessarily, and I don't work in this, but it's just a thought process, isn't that you have to have that short-term solution, but then you have to have a long-term solution as well. And the long-term solution is as important or more important than the short-term solution, where you have a structure where maybe you can, if you have people that are consistently coming into that short-term housing situation, then you put them in a smaller long-term housing situation with wraparound services, where people have mental health care things that they need help with. A lot of the transient population probably has drug issues that they need help with, things like that, where you can provide those services in a structured environment and then hopefully transition them out.
Potentially teach them skills also.
Yes.
Right, so that they can join the workforce.
I know that there's some interesting models in place in different places, especially Kansas City, things like that I've done some research into, where they do tiny home type structures where they'll have 8 tiny homes around a community area, access area, where they do wraparound services, and these are for homeless veterans. But it's the same concept where you're doing homeless services and you're providing the services to that location versus having them go out to several locations. You do job training and all kinds of different things. I think it's a way bigger scope of discussion in terms of like you're talking about. How do we long-term solve a problem versus just patchwork ad hoc throwing stuff at it?
But to me, this is the start of coming up with a cohesive solution.
Yeah.
You know, and something I think would be worth discussing.
When is the meeting for the special permit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the city.
Is that in front of the planning and zoning then?
It's in front of the Board of Adjustment.
I didn't even know they had a board of adjustment.
Well, the only reason that I know about it is because I'm business partners with Chris Wall, and he's on that board. And he was telling me that nobody on that board knows why it's coming before them and not the zoning board.
Well, a special use permit would be the zoning board, you would think.
Don't know.
Okay, well, interesting. So when are they meeting, noon? Or after? I know I got an email on it. I was thinking about going just so I could learn some of these things we're talking about here today as to what the plan was.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. Oh, right. Well, that's even better. We'll make it work. I'm gonna probably go watch because I want to learn some about this because I think it's something. Like you said, Ramsey County probably as an entity ourselves, we're probably the least affected, but we're one of the ones that had money involved in it.
Right.
Trying to help them out because they needed long-term viability in terms of you can only rely on volunteers so long if you have a small volunteer base until they burn out.
Right.
So then at some point you have to start talking about, and it's something that's rolled around in my head for a long time. We don't have long-term drug treatment facilities here. We don't have, I mean, we really have a gap where we need to help people, but the problem is ongoing funding and payment. When you can't charge somebody's insurance because they don't have insurance to give them long-term drug treatment, how do you structure all of these things? They're all kind of wrapped in the same envelope, basically.
And the problems are difficult, but it's sort of like a tumor. I mean, I hate to choose that, but the right answer is not to do nothing.
Exactly.
Right? Even if what you're doing might not be exactly the right thing. So we as a community really need to start doing more because everyone that I've talked to anecdotally has made observations that things are getting worse.
Yeah, and I've heard those concerns as well from multiple downtown business owners as well as just people that work downtown about safety concerns and things of that nature, and it's becoming an issue. So it's something that everybody needs to be a part of talking about how we can help fix it.
But I mean, like I said, it depends on how this board feels, but I really would probably be in favor, especially when we've got all these COVID dollars, about talking to the city and to Spirit Lake Nation to see if we can come to a better solution that encompasses all three of our issues. But that's
well, where's the need in terms of each entity essentially, and then where's the proper placement of a facility that would make something work? I think are questions we have to
I think
get
if we'd like
to.
to have a further discussion on this, we should place it on the agenda and talk about it, discuss it properly.
Sorry for upsetting the agenda.
No, that's okay. I mean, but the deeper we dive into things.
Groundwork we should do.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it needs to be an agenda item before we get too deep in the weeds.
Well, I didn't know how seriously people wanted to talk about it either, so.
Well.
I'm always willing to talk about anything.
I think you bring up a good point that it does need to be something that we address and gets addressed, so thank you for bringing it up. You want it for the.
Sure, and then that'll give me time to go and talk to Terry Johnson and the mayor, and I don't have any connections to anybody in Spirit Lake, but anybody knows anybody.
Well, at least see what happens with the permit meeting and all of those things, and see what the plans are. And
Well, that permit meeting, like, needs.
I might learn something.
I'm not sure that it's open, because I don't know that I mean, it's probably open to the public, but I don't.
It's a public meeting. It's a work in the city.
But, yeah.
They probably have never had anybody at the Board of Adjustment meeting.
What I'm saying is maybe there's some connection there for yourself.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll know what happens at it, but.
Well, I'm gonna go watch if I can. Something new every day.
Anything else, Lucas?
No, I think I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, do you have anything?
Just a lot of ours, we were working on the budget and jail count's been running around 80, so. Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Social services. Right.
Oh, yeah, I guess, I didn't mention social services. We hired, our long-term, I don't know what the title was, administrative, essentially our financial person, Christy Chigas. Left us unfortunately, but, we're glad that she had an opportunity for doing something different, and she went over to Human Service Center, so that's.
19 years.
19 years she worked for us, and she was kind of Rhonda's right hand in terms of all the financials, so it's gonna take a little bit of getting used to with somebody new, but, they hired a new, I believe they did, they had some people in place that they were looking at hiring, so we haven't had a meeting since, but, so it'll be a little bit used to, but that's okay.
They hired someone in.
Yeah, and that's what the plan was. I mean, they, as of our last meeting, they weren't going to be meeting with that person. I hadn't heard if they had hired them.
Yep.
But,
Yeah, she started last Monday.
yeah, but otherwise, everything's going pretty well, social services.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Auditor's office is doing well. Andy put together a spreadsheet for us for COVID expenses. Whatever we've received thus far, and the expenses that we've spent out of it. And we still have no idea what we can spend the additional COVID money that we are expecting in May. But according to a legislative blog that I read from one of the state senators, is that we can't spend it lowering taxes. So we're not exactly sure what that means or what we can spend it on. I do know that NACO sent out an email yesterday. The White House is having a conference call at noon today. If anybody's interested to jump on that and talk about the COVID funding and the proposed infrastructure bill that's being laid out. So Candy, thank you for the summary, the spreadsheet. You see in your packets, we have an update from the chamber. They're looking for sponsors for Devil's Run. The Devil's Run car show will be held the first weekend in June.
For volunteers.
They're looking for some volunteers or sponsorship. So if you're interested in helping out at the Devil's Run, they'd love to have you. Airport Authority, we haven't met yet this month, but got good news yesterday that SkyWest in March, we had 508 boardings for March, which was a 42% increase from a year ago and a 9% increase over March in 2019. So people are becoming more and more comfortable with traveling, and boardings should start picking up at the airport, which is great news. So, legislative update, that culvert bill that we had been discussing was defeated. Return of the road train bill, we had some concerns over the road train. They were initially proposing a trailer of up to 150 feet with no local permitting authority involvement. And so we were able to get that changed in conference committee, and I think they're limited to 130 feet now. And local road authorities have to be involved in the permitting process on that. And they killed a couple of election bills in the Senate. Amended they had a potato warehouse tax exemption. They will have a legislative wrap-up that's hosted by NDACO down at the Dakota on May 10th. And they'll have a block of rooms set aside, and that'll be an in-person type of deal or virtual. Yep. The big news, Ed, I think one of the things that we've been pushing was DOCR, Department of Corrections, will be have to enter into contracts with counties to house prisoners that are sentenced to the state penitentiary. And while they're housed at the counties, we can get a daily fee plus medical.
Good.
Yep, yeah, that was a big thing that we really pushed hard on this session, and DOCR didn't have any complaints on it, so that was one of the highlights, so. But May 10th, Dakota, if you're interested.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday, so go down Sunday night and stay at the Dakota and get a legislative wrap up from all the bills that pass through the state that will affect local counties. So, a couple of weeks ago now, Kevin, we had a meeting with the township officers. Was it the 26th of March? Yeah. That one, that was, had good representation from most townships, I think. The room was full, or not quite full, but, they had a good meeting with Ramsey County Township officers. So appreciate both for coming and stepping in, and I was talking and I looked around and I was going to introduce him and he snuck out.
Apologize, I was starting.
No, that's perfectly okay. I'm glad you took the time and came, so. Other than that, I can't. Have I missed anything?
We're good on my end.
Andy?
Legislative action, is that Dakota?
Right, yeah.
Last I heard it was the Heritage side.
Um,
Yeah, they have changed. They got some more room for it.
Yeah.
I think that, well, at least a block of rooms will be reserved at the ramp quota, whether they have it at the Heritage Center, the wrap up itself, or they were looking at a larger meeting room, so I think those were always at the ramp quota to accommodate a larger crowd. So,
Motion to adjourn?
yep. Thank you all for your time this morning. Very much appreciated.
It's hot in this room.
It is, I'm sweating.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Get the heck out of here, Candy.